Welcome to another Talking History with Humphreys and Reed, with me, military historian Paul Reed.
And me, Dr. Victoria Humphreys, author and researcher.
And we're really pleased this time to be joined by Guillaume Deprez, who's a French art historian, who's going to talk to us on the subject of Rose Valland and the purloining of art and other artifacts and ordinary possessions in France during the occupied period by Nazi Germany in the Second World War. So, bonjour, Guillaume.
Bonjour. So I'm Guillaume Deprez, art historian. I studied at the Louvre School, the same school that Rose Valland studied in. And if we can get the images. So what I was studying, I discovered that Adolf Hitler was a failed artist, that art was one of the central points of the Nazi program, that the Nazis burnt and destroyed works of art, and the subject of art destruction has been keeping me busy since, to the point that I wrote a book about it called Lost Treasures, where I record 5,000 years of art destruction. And there's obviously a chapter about the Nazis that is about the idea of the Nazis looting memories from people, as we will discuss today with the life of Rose Valland. So Rose Valland, we see on the left, she was not from Paris. She was from a very modest family. She had half a dozen diplomas. By now, the picture is getting close to her 40s. And she was not even paid. Next image, no, not yet, sorry. On the right, we see her after the war as a monument woman. But the next image, thank you. We see where the action takes place. At the back, we have the Louvre. In front, the Tuileries Garden, and the small rectangular building on the left is the Jeu de Paume museum, where she worked as an unpaid assistant curator. Then the French occupation arrives, the Nazis arrive. The next image, please. We see the Jeu de Paume is around the corner from the Louvre and right by the street, where it's perfect to get goods in and out. And on the very first days of the occupation, we have from the next image, lorries, crates, bringing things. And next image again, visitors, the second in command of the Nazi machine going on the right, getting greeted by Kurt von Baer, one of the bigger actors of the Nazi looting. And this is the things that, they are the things that Rose Valland, assistant curator still in place, sees on the first day of the occupation. If you can. So again, Kurt von Baer on the right, Göring easy to recognize in the middle. Next again. So the museum is turned into a private art gallery for Göring to help himself to whatever art is stolen. So von Baer is on the left in front near the chandelier, Göring in the middle, and the tall man on the right is art historian Bruno Losset, who got away, like many of the people involved in that story. He lived until 2007, 95 years old, in a safe artworks stolen from Jews in the Second World War discovered. So a lot of these people, except the top ones, they got away with it. Next image, please. And Rosenberg here turns up at the Jeu de Paume. This is the intellectual of the Nazi machine, one of the worst of the bunch. And these are the people that the unpaid assistant curator Rose Valland mingled with. Next image. Now, much friendlier face, Jacques Jojard, the director of the Louvre and the French museums. He saved the entire content of the Louvre and 100 museums from the Nazis. He asked Rose Valland before the Nazis arrived to help, which of course she did, to save what was into Jeu de Paume away from Paris. Then everybody returns to Paris. And he is hoping to be there to record whatever the Nazis are doing. The Nazis do not want any art historians to be witnessing what they're about to do. So he's not allowed to enter the Jeu de Paume. And that's the importance of Rose Valland. She was there. She was, I think she's the next image. That's the 1939, before the arrival of the Germans emptying the Louvre of its treasures. And next again. So this is what Kurt von Baer sees when he's in the Jeu de Paume. A woman, 40 years old, unmarried, unpaid, totally harmless. And he allows her to stay. He signs the Ausweis she needed to enter. The Ausweis to enter the Jeu de Paume was signed by one of the artisans of the Nazi Plunder, and he helped that woman to spy under the Nazi noses for 4 years. For 4 years, every day, she takes a bicycle with paper she looted from the bin, with the negatives of the photos she stole from them. She copied these things in her apartment at night, returned in the morning with those, put them back into the bin and wherever they were, hoping to not get caught. Once a week, she walked from the Jeu de Paume to the Louvre Museum, 5 minutes away, to give all of the information to Jacques Joujard. And that is stage one of the importance of Rose Valland, is to be the key witness of the art plunder of the Nazis. I'm not a military specialist at all, as you are, but is there anyone else during the Second World War who spent 4 years spying underneath the noses of the top level Nazis, including Göring? Maybe in the next image. So, and it's a bit hidden by the column. So on the left, we have the Jeu de Paume transformed into the art gallery for Göring's pleasure. Behind the column with us, we have Göring and von Baer. So all of the looting was done under pretense of legality. First, people lose their French nationality, lose their rights. Their possessions became suddenly honorless. And out of the kindness of their good heart, the Nazis arrive and save the art from the people that either escaped it right in time or sadly did not. So all of the looting was done under pretense of legality. And here we have Göring, who pretends to be the great art man, who pretends to be the great Renaissance man, who turns up with his private train. Cigars, champagne, flowers are laid out for him. Imagine any one of us going to a top museum where you see Rembrandts on the wall, Vermeers on the wall. You say, I'll have that one, thank you very much. And you don't need to worry where it came from, and you don't need to worry about bills at the end, because obviously you don't pay for that. Maybe the next image. So Adolf Hitler in Berlin, he had his own catalog of the paintings for his museum, because he was dreaming about being in a museum and dreaming about outdoing the French, outdoing the Louvre with his own museum in Linz. He had his own catalog, and for his birthdays, they gave him catalogs of photographs of paintings. And people forget that in 1945, in his bunker, when the Russians were there, Adolf Hitler was still playing with his toy museum, hoping to play the museum curator, the museum director. Here we have the second in command of the Nazi machine, Göring, doing something similar next to Bruno Losset, the same person who threatened Rose Valland later in the war, and the one who got away with it. Maybe next image. Here we have Göring, who did, unlike Hitler, like modern art, looking at Matisse paintings. You have the champagne on the side. They are in the Jeu de Paume. These are the things that Rose Valland, who was employed, so they thought, the Nazis, to look after the heating, the electricity. She was not helping them. She was there part of the furniture, transparent in the corner. They even gave her a job, which was to man the phones, because they didn't know she spoke German. So imagine now, as a spy, every minute of every day for 4 years, you're rubbing shoulders with these guys. And if once they actually understand that you speak German, they actually realize that you have in your pocket somewhere their papers, their photos. That's the end of you. Torture, death are certain. And that is the weight in which she lived for 4 years. Remember, at the beginning, she was not even paid. Jacques Jojard, the Louvre director, said, hey, you're the only art historian in-house. You're the only person who can witness this, the biggest art theft in human history. Can you please stay? Others would have run away. Others would have done nothing. She decided, in her own words, to save some of the beauty of the world. Maybe next. So, her files. This is one of them. In the middle, you see name of the owner of the painting, description of the painting, numbers. On the left, you have the report for Adolf Hitler. The letters is his name at the bottom, because that painting was one of the top paintings he dreamt of having. And on the right, you see American soldiers retrieving the painting, because one thing people possibly don't really realize, at the very beginning, the monument men, there were 3 for 50,000 square miles. 3 persons, 50,000 square miles, hundreds of monuments and places to check per person in a country bombed with a lot of hostile peoples. Imagine discovering the treasures where you don't know where to look. So what she did is recording it. And the next image is the only one. Yes, next one, please. Where it's not about the artworks. This time is about the risk she took. It's in 44, a few months before D-Day. And as I translated at the bottom, you see that she was caught in the act of spying by Bruno Losset, who was not just an art historian, he was SS. In the photos, he's not wearing the SS outfit, but the guards at the entrance, the Gestapo. Losset is a SS. And you have Rose Valland, who gets caught in the act of deciphering an address, because the destination of the goods is a closely guarded secret. A lot of people involved as a Nazis into the theft don't even know exactly where things are going. And here you have Losset, the art historian for Göring, who catches in the act of recording an address of destination of looted art. So as you see translated, he told him in the eye that you could be shot for what you're doing, and she calmly responded that she's aware that she is not stupid enough, but she kept her cool. So a lot of people, a lot of us, we would like to imagine we'll be heroes when the time comes, but I don't think we will know. But this woman, that she did these things for 4 years.
Guillaume, sorry, can I just ask a question about that previous slide?
Sure.
Sorry, Paul, can we go back? So
this is one of her files, and I did my translation on this.
So this isn't a diary, it's loose papers that belong to Rose Valland that's in a file, or?
Once a week, she goes to the Louvre to hand Jacques Jojard files that he passed on to the resistance and later the allies and so on.
So basically,
one of them, all of the files are about recording artworks. This one is one of the few where you have a little bit of what she feels, particularly the fact that she was caught in the act of spying.
Okay, so she goes to the Louvre and provides a weekly report on what she's seen. And in this particular week, this is when she is found spying and is warned she could be shot. So on this occasion, Guillaume, why Why would he have just allowed her to carry on if he caught her in the act of spying?
It was already sort of decided by the Nazis, von Baer and Losse, that eventually they would get rid of her.
Mm-hmm.
But by then she was still useful.
Okay.
And one of the uses is each time there was a bickering or problems between the Nazis, she was the perfect for woman. And she was happy to take the blame and to keep it cool, which will not be that easy to keep it cool when you're surrounded by the top Nazis. That would be quite difficult.
So my understanding there then is whatever they thought she had done on this occasion, on balance, it wasn't serious enough to warrant getting rid of her at that time. Her use outweighed what she'd done on this occasion.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And they plan to get rid of her eventually anyway.
Yeah.
So now the liberation, nearly 2 months after D-Day, the Nazis are still busy plundering, filling trains, and sending the trains away. So the last train, we're going to talk about it, it was made even into a movie. Here we have a similar train getting filled with goods, but these goods, the thing that we will talk about soon, is difficult to comprehend, is the Nazis did not just steal fine art. They stole the entire contents of the apartments of 38,000 Jews in Paris, and in total, France, Belgium, Netherlands, nearly 70,000 apartments, and the same trains. The last train was only 10% art. It was 90% worthless junk, bric-a-brac. These are not my words. They are the words of the top Nazis themselves. And we will see soon the quantities involved because they are staggering. And also we will discuss and see soon that the same boxcars were transporting people. So the same system was used to steal art, to kill people, and to steal goods from people. The numbers are coming. So this last train, we now in August 44, the Allies are coming, the liberation is coming, the Nazis are still busy stealing. Rose Valland is the key person who saved that train. James Rorimer, the curator of the Metropolitan Museum in New York, now Monuments Man, just arrives. He is following Rose Valland to the railway station. The train never left Paris suburbs, thanks to information. And James Rorimer, I read his book, is also himself witnessing the train and saying that most of the wagons was filled of worthless junk and bric-a-brac. And that's the last train who left Paris, who was trying to, who the Nazis took in 44, August 44. Maybe next image. So we have James Rorimer here already in Germany. We have on the right, I imagine what he saw when he met Rose Valland. So Rose Valland has spent 4 years as a silent, transparent woman in the background. And now she's turning into a woman of action. James Rorimer was the one begging information from her. You don't spend 4 years spying on Göring, von Baer, and the other, Rosenberg and the others, and you're going to reveal your secret to the first person who turns up. So James Rorimer was informed this woman, maybe she knows things. And the thing with him, he treated Rose Valland as a fellow art historian. They managed to trust each other. And eventually, like in a movie, Rose Valland invites him for champagne, gives her the files, and the files is where nearly all the depots are. So James Rorimer, the Monuments Men, the Allies, now they have where not to bomb and where to find things. So Rose Valland is the #1 person involved in that story, the key person. Where are the things? We have to remember that the monuments men, they were sort of dragged around the army. They were few of them at the beginning. They had the immensity of Germany, Austria to look for. And then Rose Valland gave James Rorimer the information where to go. 10 days later, she herself became a monument woman, went off to Germany, stayed in Germany for 7 years. Maybe the next image. So here we have an art historian, spy for 4 years. There's not very much a woman of action. She's Captain Rose Valland in the French army. She's also Lieutenant Colonel in the 7th US Army, soon to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So she's not exactly a second-rate character. She is one of the key heroes of the Second World War for studying art, both during the war and after the war as one of the monument women. And maybe the next image. That leads us to the movies. So I'm really not afraid to say, how did I even learn that the Nazis stole art is from that movie. It went on television. I was a child. I don't remember how old I was. And that movie informed me that Nazis also stole art. Later, I studied art history, and I learned a lot more about it. So Rose Valland wrote a book. That book was adapted into that movie, 1964. A great movie on the face of it, with fantastic actors. But the problem for both this movie and the next one, Monuments Men, the movie, is these movies claim to be based on fact, but claim to report factual truth. And most of us, myself included, we learn to things from movies, and that's okay. But the problem is when movies claim to be factual, and they're not. So the fictional Rose Valland in that movie, at the beginning, she has a few minutes in her role at spying in the Jeu de Paume. Then the entire movie is about the train and about the railway workers saving the train. Except the truth is the train never left Paris region. And the business of the story of the fact the art was looted from private people, from Jewish families, is never mentioned at all in that movie. That gives us to the second movie, the most recent movie. I don't have an image for that. The Monuments movie is based on a very good book, Monuments Men. Maybe there's an image next still about, yes. So Esdel in his book, he gave 30 pages to Rose Valland. In his book, she's not a second-rate character. She's called Great Hero. And he explained that she has a pivotal role into the very discovery and safety of the looted art. James Rorimer, that is in the movie, the fictional Matt Damon, wrote in a draft of his own book that Rose Valland is the heroine of the book. In the published book, he wrote that the one person above all of us, that everyone who allowed us to track the Nazi loot was Rose Valland. So Rose Valland was not a second-rate character. In the movie, that stays on the first frame based on a true story, you have Rose Valland that is transformed into a Hollywood caricature of the French woman. So she is ungrateful to the nice American who comes to save her. She's in prison on accusation of being a collaborator. So Rose Valland in prison is and the whole caricature, and then nowhere in the movie she's shown in uniform. You only have in the movie Rose Valland, the spy, fair enough, but she's not grateful to the American who comes to save her, and then her role is sort of over. You never saw display a person you would imagine would be a perfect Hollywood character, someone who was Lieutenant Colonel in the US Army, captain in the French Army, someone who spied underneath the nose of Göring, someone that is a key character into the story of saving stolen art. Yet, for reasons, I mean, she's not the main character in that movie. Maybe that's okay, but in the movie, the thing she actually did as a Monument Woman, because the movie is called Monument Men, she doesn't even appear. So most people learn about Rose Valland from that movie, and what they see is the caricature of the French. They're arrogant, they're ungrateful, and they're in the background. She was one of the key heroes, in the words of the author of the book. She was one of the key heroes in the words of the people who were there. Now, let's keep going about the train, the last train. So this is her receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom. She received many distinctions in Germany, France, and America. She is one of the most highly decorated women in France. She became a curator in the 50s, but proper curator, but never giving a real curating job. By the 60s, she started to be considered a bit of a pain in the ass by her French colleagues, because she was all about the past and everybody wanted to get things underneath the carpet. She died in 1980, totally forgotten. And the issue of talking about what happened during the Second World War only got resurrected in the 90s. And that's why Rose Valland is certainly not a second-rate character, because what you need to prove that your grandparents were spoiled is you need paperwork, you need people who keep traces of things. And Rose Valland is one of the key persons in that story, because she recorded whatever she saw. Maybe next image, please. So back to the trains and the 1944 train. This is Paris. In Paris, you had 3 camps in Paris. This is furniture, not Rembrandts. You see sideboards. You can get that for 5 or 10 euros. This was nothing. That's what the Jewish prisoners in camps in Paris were asked to clean, to repair, and to put into boxcars. Next. That's the Nazi looting. Kitchen equipment. Next again. So underneath, I wrote, translated in French, in English, what Rose Valland said. Nazis pursued riches not only from opulent Jewish art collections, but as well in the humble possessions, whose only value is in human tenderness. After this image, I will try to quantify the loot, but see what it's looted. Bowls, teacups, coffee pots, vases. Next image, maybe. This is one of the camps in Paris. Austerlitz train station, huge warehouses. There was so much to loot that you had about 150 trucks daily turning, box after box of chairs, coat hangers, sofas, things that were stolen from 38,000 apartments, not containing Rembrandts and Vermeers everywhere, but modest chairs, modest tables, all of it was taken, and all of it was organized by Jewish prisoners in camps in Paris to go to Germany. So this image, first for scale, you take about 3 crates, it's roughly the size of a human. I don't speak German, but I use Mr. Google to help me. The image here says it's kitchen equipment. So you have spoons and whatever inside those boxes. That was taken from people. That was brought into trains. That was sent to Germany. Maybe next image.
Guillaume, sorry
Sure,
to interrupt.
sure.
Just going to say the actual name of the operation for this was Mobile Furniture.
Möbel Aktion. Yes,
yeah.
there's information coming about it.
Yeah.
So the perception about the Nazi loot that we all have, is the Nazis stole great paintings, stole masterpieces of mankind, committed the biggest art theft history. They very much did. They certainly did that. But what is very hard to wrap our heads around it, myself included, is they stole everything else. This image and the ones coming next will be there to help us illustrate these things. Some of these things are things that Rose Valland witnessed herself, because some of the goods found their way to the Jeu de Paume. The train she helped saving in 44, the last train, was filled with 90% of these crates, not just art, but these things. She called them the humble possessions of embodying human tenderness. And maybe next image.
I was just going to say,
Sure,
Guillaume, is that, you know, for me, when I look at this, it's not just about the kind of high arts and high culture that the Germans stole. It's almost kind of every aspect of the Jewish population's life is being erased by the removal of
that's what's coming for the rest of the images, is getting rid of the memories of people, getting rid of their existence. The German way of thinking is, in East, you need tables and chairs for the Wehrmacht and whatever to work on. And in Germany, the houses who were blown up by the Allied bombings, the Germans themselves needed a new bed, a new table, a new coffee pot. And these were taken from Jewish families. As we're going to see soon with the paperwork the Nazis did, it's important to realize that the winter of 41-42, the moment where the decision for the final solution is taken, is also where you have Rosenberg in charge of the art theft, is suggesting to Adolf Hitler, why don't we also take the furniture from the Jewish dwellings? So once again, the trains, they carry artworks, they carry junk, and they carry people. All of it is erasing the existence of the people, and is one of the monstrosities that were committed during the Second World War. The name of the action is Möbel Aktion. The paperwork is coming in the next images. This is more of the Möbel Aktion. So these are people wrapping teacups in straw to make sure they don't break on the way to Germany. This is in Paris. And more again. So because I'm not very good with numbers, I did for myself this graphic. I played with credit cards to be able to understand the numbers. So on the left, this is the art stolen from France. 138 freight cars, it contained 100,000 works of art. What does 100,000 works of art mean? It means you take the Louvre, you take the Metropolitan Museum, you take the British Museum, and you still have more museums to find until you manage to fill that amount. 100,000 works of art, masterpieces. We're talking about 3 major museums in terms of size. And that is, obviously the Nazis stole from all Europe, not just France. But this is a very big part of the biggest art theft in history. Each of the little dots is a freight car. Now on the right is the number of freight cars containing goods stolen from apartments, the Möbel Aktion theft. So that's 2 years. So you have France, Belgium, and Netherlands. It's nearly 27,000 freight cars of stolen goods. So because I'm not good with numbers, I had to take the calculator. If we take the quantity here, 99% of the art of the things stolen by the Nazis in Western Europe is household goods from Jewish families. And the amount of art that is the biggest art theft in history is a minute amount because it's 0.005%. So more images to try to help make sense of what we're discussing right now. Next image, please. This is Rosenberg writing to Hitler in winter 41 and asking Hitler his approval to seize the furniture of the Jews who are about to flee. In other words, for some reason, the Jews are not in their homes because we took them. And what about not wasting the things that were into their homes and making good use of them? This is the paperwork signed right now. Next photo. These is for the American viewers to try to make sense of the quantities involved. This is a stadium, the Houston Astrodome. If I'm not mistaken, it's one of the largest indoor buildings of the United States. So the quantity of goods taken from Jewish families in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands would fill that entire stadium to the top. And the next image is another equivalent. You take the pool in front of Lincoln Memorial, you fill it 40 times over. That's the quantity. So I always had problems to wrap my head around the numbers. That's why I did these equivalents to help making sense of them. Is still beyond comprehension. And maybe there's another image coming. So we all know from the movie The Train, from most of the images we still see today, that the freight cars were transporting masterpieces. They were. But we have to speak about it. Next image. This is a freight car in Paris taking people on a one-way journey. And next, this is the arrival in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And you recognize the SNCF sign on the wagon. That's the French National Railway logo. So needless to say, these people, these photos are taken by Nazis. Most of the images we see in here are taken by Nazis. And sadly, everyone taking this picture, the children and women, is the last moments, their last moments on Earth, because soon after the picture is over for them. So that's what we talk about. These trains were carrying artworks, were carrying chairs and sofas, were carrying people. And the things are related. There's no paperwork who clearly states that exactly the point, but the two things are totally related. The decisions happen at the same time, and one happened as a consequence of the other.
So the freight cars are kind of not just erasing the artwork, the possessions, the ordinary household goods, taking that all the way to, you know, be used by the conquerors. They're also being used to erase the people themselves by deporting them to death camps. So it's
yes, and erasing their existence and erasing their memories, because part of the discussion with Rose Valland, she said that herself, calling them humble possessions whose only value is into human feelings, is we have this image today. Some woman recovers a painting that is now worth 100 million. So we don't feel that bad for her. You think, how you just got $100 million, good for you. But we don't really realize that the people in Paris, in Belgium, in Netherlands, they didn't have Rembrandts and Vermeers in their living room. They had modest chairs, modest tables. They were regular people. all of the things they had, all of it is gone. Because the artworks are missing by the tens of thousands or even more. They have intrinsic value as artworks. They probably and hopefully will survive. I have seen with my own eyes a special display of paintings that have no owners, that are still under care of the French museums, but they are ownerless because the paperwork is trail is broken. So now I'm talking really as an art historian. I look at the paintings, I was whatever. I look at the names of the painters, I thought, never heard about them. I was thinking how much value this painting with fair auction, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, if you're lucky. So imagine that your parents, your grandparents are gone, and you recover a painting that is only worth 10,000 at auction. 10,000 is not an amount of money that is going to change your life. It's going to help you pay bills, but that's it. But that painting might, or that chair, that stool, that whatever, still help you visualize the people that are gone, because their papers were shredded, were burnt. So all of the photos with the faces of the people we see here, they're gone. Their children and grandchildren, if they survived, had nothing to help them remember their parents back. Their existence was erased. This is what we see with these images.
And the idea that the kind of the theft of just artwork impacted these people kind of ties into modern day anti-Semitism, I think, really, because it kind of implies that every Jew had is
a banker,
yeah,
is a billionaire, and has half a dozen Rembrandts on the wall.
Yeah.
And clearly, as we will see, and with the images coming, it's not the case.
Yeah.
And for these people, what was devastating, they had no connection to this artwork, but everything they owned, everything they had, everything that was part of their collective history was confiscated and sent off to a foreign country, and they themselves were then deported.
Yes.
Can I just read something? I found a quote that kind of links into this. This is William Watkin, who's a professor of contemporary philosophy and literature at Brunel University. And he points out that we exist as subjective beings in a world of objects, and loss of an object of meaning has repercussions between subjects, other subjects, lost object, and present objects in a living metonymic environment of proximity and distance. So in other words, the lost object creates a void that is not only felt in the immediacy of the loss, but spirals outwards, affecting all of those who come afterwards. And that's essentially what we're talking about, isn't it? By saying that when we lose these objects, small objects, whatever they may be, a special chair or a piece of porcelain that belonged to our family, if we lose them, we somehow kind of lose our identity.
Yeah, that's the tragedy.
Yeah. Paul, did you have something similar to share about this with your French family?
Well, I mean, I have nothing of them. I have no idea what they look like. I have, in some cases, only a kind of bare idea of where they actually lived, and they ended up, with the fate of what we see in this image here, sent off in SNCF boxcars from Drancy or one other location, Compiègne maybe, to Auschwitz, where, having been selected on the selection ramp, most of them were dead within the hour of arrival, I suspect. I don't even know if any survived at all. But their kind of existence really has been kind of eradicated, really, in terms of that there is just nothing of them as far as I can tell. And that kind of experience, I guess, would be true of tens of thousands of people, within France who have connections to France like that through Jewish ancestors.
But essentially, I think what Guillaume's saying is that their property does remain. It's just lost. It's out there, and you might find that at flea markets and things like that, or, you know, for example, books that were taken from Jewish families, just regular books that still remain on Berlin library shelves.
And I was even trying to visualize, maybe you have today German families who are not aware that the sofa they sit on, they don't know.
Or the spoon they put in their mouth.
Yes, was stolen from a family that ended, as we saw in the picture, in Auschwitz. Because the painting, Vermeer, Rembrandt, Matisse, the Picasso, the important things, fortunately, thanks to Rose Valland and others, there is a paper trail. And hopefully, eventually, these things can be tracked down and maybe returned to the descendants. But the rest, who cares about a spoon? Who cares about a sofa? Things that we've seen all of us at the flea market for a fiver, for 10 quid. But this sofa might still help someone remember grandpa and grandma. Because the ugly sofa helps someone to visualize the apartment of grandpa and grandma, the sound of the voice of grandpa and grandma, and that's the value of these things. They are human memories.
Yeah.
And the Nazis, they very much understood what they were doing. They erased it. Maybe the next. So this is one of the camps in Paris. We have the Nazi here is Kurt von Baer, one of the top directors of the effort of the Nazi looting. What is he doing here? He's not involved into the wrapping of a fine artwork. He's involved checking the wrapping of a coffee pot in front of him, behind him kitchen equipment, because the boxes we saw earlier labeled kitchen equipment, these are the things that the top brass of the Nazis were involved with. The people who are doing the wrapping, they are Jewish prisoners. They were taken from Drancy in the 3 camps inside Paris. He might have looked like, compared to others, sort of safe work, but still 20% of the people photographed here did join the trains they packed the same morning on a one-way journey, because 20% of them were taken to Auschwitz or other camps. And this is the staggering thing that I discovered along the way, is the effort who went behind looting regular things from regular people, the same things you see, the coffee pot you can get for 5 quid at the flea market. They were involved in that. It's completely, is beyond, I'm beyond words to describe these things. So maybe in the next image. That's the collection. The crates, crate after crate, cushions, blankets, pots, lamps, prisoners, Rosenberg visiting, the top brass Nazis visiting. One of the camps, as we will see with the other images, was the high quality camp, where you had high quality goods on display for the Nazis in Paris. So you could come there with your mistress, get her a fur coat. You can get women and men who worked for fashion houses to sew for you a dress, to fix your handbag, to fix your clock. And obviously, all of these things were looted from apartments.
Was that the Levitan, Guillaume? Is that camp you're talking about, the satellite
We have
camp?
3 camps. One of them is the department store Levitan. The
Yeah.
former image, if we come back to it, is, if I'm not mistaken, Levitan, that is, thank you for asking, an actual department store.
Mm-hmm.
The owner was Jewish and lost his store. Mm-hmm. And that store becomes the equivalent of the Jeu de Paume, mm-hmm. but not for fine art, for coffee pots and saucers and regular things. So the Nazis arrived there and they say, oh, I need a saucepan. Here's a saucepan. So you have Bassano, the high quality camp for the high quality goods, where you come for shoes and handbags and bed sheets, as we will see. You have Levitan, the store where you can display nicely tables and interiors, because the Nazis were quite proud of the fact that they stole 69,000 apartments and they did manage to wrap and organize 65,000 ready-to-use interiors for Germans. So imagine you're a German, you say, oh, my home has been bombed by a Allied bomber. They can say, don't worry, we have ready for you the set, table, chairs, sofa, saucepans, and so on. So that was all organized. We will see extracts of their own papers. It was all very efficiently organized and recorded. So I'm not sure which one that is, but that's one of the 3 Parisian camps. Next one. So mattresses. People sleep on a mattress. They're taken. Never sleep on a mattress ever again. But the mattress is put into another freight car on the way to Germany.
The ironic thing there, Guillaume, as I think we spoke before, is the fact that, you know, we've talked about obviously Nazi hatred of the Jewish race, and yet they want to sleep on their mattresses and they want to take their bed sheets and things like this.
Yes, that's the next image. You see the Bassano camp, where you have things that get cleaned, ironed, organized. Rosenberg, the Nazi terrorist, one of the worst Nazis, came here, got himself bed sheets, and slept on bed sheets taken from Jewish families. It's hard to So here is the fine hands, men and women, mending things, because it was also important for the Nazis to make sure that the furniture was sent in good condition, the vases were not broken, the teacups were not broken, and whenever possible, things were fixed. So these people were taken from Drancy because they had good qualifications in the realm of fashion and clockwork and so on. Repairing shoes on order for Nazis, which again, imagine the thing, you go to a museum, you can pick things from the wall, don't worry about paying. You need a handbag, don't worry about that. You need a warm blanket, don't worry about that. You need your clock fixed, don't worry about that, but don't ask, I mean, maybe do, where the clock came from and who is doing the fixing of the clock. That's so 70,000 apartments are emptied of everything, curtains included, and light bulbs. Imagine the trouble of unscrewing the light bulbs from the apartment, wrapping them without crushing them, and then in Austerlitz camp, or Leviton, I'm not sure, you have, as pictured here, a woman whose job is to screw every light bulb in one side to check if they work, then wrap them to be sent to Germany. That's the extent of the Nazi plunder. As deeply as taking all the light bulbs from Jewish families.
It's kind of staggering, really, the extent of it.
It's beyond imagination. You have to study these things to discover that, because it's beyond imagination. Everybody has a rough idea from what we have on television, movies, and so on, that the Nazis were the greatest art thieves. They were. But you have to go deep into studying the subject, that they went that far, both into the idea of taking the curtains, cleaning the curtains, organizing the curtains, sending the curtains into crates who say curtains. And the light bulbs, the things that has the things that can so easily be crushed, but no, it was checked, it worked, it was wrapped, it was put into a train to Germany. And the quantities, that's why I did the equivalence earlier. You can take a huge stadium and fill it with worthless bric-a-brac and worthless junk, the actual words of the Nazis, some of the Nazis themselves. That's the thing that stole from people. So imagine people are slaughtered, their memories are slaughtered, the papers are burnt, all of their possessions are taken, and the people who survive, who try to memorize their lost ancestors, have nothing to memorize them by, no birth certificate, no photograph of grandma and grandpa on the day of their wedding, and not any of the humble items. All of us, we remember when we were kids, grandpa and grandma preparing breakfast for us, coffee, chocolate when you're a child, and so on. All of this is also taken. And that's one of the things I still find the most staggering still today.
Guillaume, what do we know about the people that were doing the sorting at the Levitat and Austerlitz? And
so fortunately, 80% of them survived, and they will be coming soon.
Okay.
2 testimonies are found and translated in English of people that were there doing these things. So more of the sorting of the interior. So you can see these things with bottles with still things inside the bottle. This looks like a market in the street of regular junk or whatever, things you can get for a favor, but that was taken from people. These people are sorting it. They're not supposed to break it because they might be killed right away or sent to the camps. Some of them actually made a point of honor of ruining as many things as they could, sewing the feet of furniture and chairs to make sure they broke on the transport to Germany. And it's also hard to fathom as a French person, as a Parisian, that we had camps in Paris.
Mm. Yeah. And some of those people would have been sorting stuff that possibly they may have recognized as belonging to their own families or their friends.
That's part of the stories. Some of people recognizing, one of the witnessing statements I read was someone realizing that his uncle or uncle's family, I don't remember the exact detail, was gone farming his uncle's goods on the equivalent of the conveyor belt. And next, the image is a translation I made of the witness testimonies of 2 of the people who were there. The first one, Roger Meyer says, describing the sadness of looking what he was doing. He states it was like dismembering a living body. And the other is Michel Bonnet, who describes the fact that they were taking the intimate life of people to the point that he really felt like people just left because the plates they were made to sort were still containing food. Like, you know, you take people out of their breakfast, take them away, and the breakfast table is then transported to the warehouse to be sorted and cleaned. And that's what the witness is describing there, that the scraps of food, they were keeping them because they were starving. That's what happened inside Paris. That's what happened in many other places all over conquered Europe, the Nazis. And this is a little bit of the disservice that some Hollywood movies are doing to the story by not getting beyond the caricatures. The movies, they state we are describing true stories. All of us, myself included, get to learn things from movies. It's okay. But if we talk about the Nazi theft, the Nazi plunder, we have to explain that it went that far.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You need to look at it in full and understand the full picture, Guillaume.
Because it's so hard to comprehend.
It is.
And that's the meaning of the other image coming. This is pieces used at Nuremberg trial. This is translation in English of German papers. This is Möbel Aktion. M action is the action furniture thing. And this is the number of things stolen from D-Day to the 1st of August. Less than 2 months. The Germans probably knew that things were turning very much against them. They still kept going. So you see China, coat hangers, curtains, and if we turn again, that's less than 2 months of things stolen. And you have a line who says toys, 99 boxes of toys. It's scraps of fur, silver goods, rags, 240 bales of rags. And that's the last image in the folder. This is a warehouse, Möbel Aktion warehouse, with boxes ready to go to Germany, containing curtains, light bulbs, vases, and chairs. As an art historian, I shouldn't pay attention to random chairs up here, because obviously, for me, Rembrandt is more important than a random chair, but yet every chair here signifies a lost life. One person sat on a chair, that person was taken into a train to never return. The chair was then put into another train to be sent to Germany. And come the 1960s, all of it started to be brushed underneath the carpet. People wanted to move on. One of the reasons Rose Valland was forgotten, even as the huge heroine she was. But that image is so poignant with the madness of stealing the goods of tens of thousands, not Rembrandts or Vermeers, but regular things that are not worth much. These things probably rotted away because with Europe bombed and the atrocities of the Nazis discovered, this was a footnote compared to the rest. The things that survived, the people who sit on these things right now, they don't know where they come from. And as part of the things that Rose Valland saw, that's the last train she stopped. The Nazis stole works of art and everything that people owned. That's why they stole the memories. They committed genocide and they wiped the memories of people. Because as an art historian and just a regular person like everyone else, every work of art contains, every teapot contains memories. And these things, the memories are gone. That's part of the poignant story and the importance of Rose Valland and the things she witnessed. And considering these things are sadly getting repeated again in Ukraine, we have again destroying memories by destroying museums, looting museums, getting rid of people. These things are happening again. So the movies tend to show the Second World War as a sort of cartoonish thing. We always see the Nazis as cartoonish figures. They were not cartoon figures. They were people involved in that. And the value of the past is to learn from the past. And that's why we need to talk about what the Nazis have done to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Definitely. I'd just like to share something else as well. If people are interested, particularly in those satellite camps of Drancy in Paris, so the Levitin, Austerlitz and Bassano, there is a book actually out. It's called Nazi Labour Camps in Paris, Austerlitz, Levitin, Bassano, and it's by Jean-Marc Dreyfus. Are you aware of that? And Sarah?
I have the French version. It's been translated in English.
They described German National Socialism was in part an immense looting project carried out on a pan-European scale. And I think, you know, your talk today, Guillaume's really proved that.
Thank you. Their book is a book that I have in French. It's a very important book, and a lot of the things I just mentioned come from that book.
Yeah. But I think what you've done today, which is different, is you have aligned the story of Rose Valland with Möbel Aktion. And, you know, by talking about them together, it kind of creates a broader picture for us to to understand. And I think what's telling is that somebody who's obviously an art historian and very much interested in those priceless works of art also had immense compassion for those smaller objects that belong to Jewish people of Paris, and understood that, okay, they weren't as valuable, but they were as valuable in terms of what they meant to people. And she understood that back then.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I think, Guillaume, you should write a book about the two, because there is so much material there. And as you said very well, you know, her story hasn't been told properly. It may have been told in some ways, but clearly it hasn't been told properly. And, you know, to give her the respect she deserves, she needs to have her story told in full. And it's really, really important to do that.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for sharing all that research with us, Guillaume, because it's a lot of research has gone into that. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I see someone's popped their hand up, which is normally a way for someone to ask a question. I don't know if that's what you wanted to do, Alan.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Oh, I'm using my laptop for the first time. I'm sorry I was late. Zoom decided to do an update. So,
no problem.
Difficult. Are the camps? This is incredibly disturbing for me, actually. But anyway, are there any traces of these camps still left?
Good question. So, the Austerlitz camp had been bombed. There's nothing visible. The two other buildings still exist, but they are offices. And aside from a plaque, there's nothing visible. And even for me, as a Parisian, even for Austerlitz, the camp of Austerlitz, I had to do a lot of work and files and archives and Google my business to try to visualize where the actual physical thing was, because it's gone. And for the two other places, Bassano and Levitin, who still exist, there's on the face of it, nothing visible. And I did not put the photo in the folder here, but if you come back to the article from which we met with Victoria and Paul, that is on a magazine that you could read, there's a photo I took of the plaque at the Jeu de Paume, who states what Rose Valland had done there. That's the only trace of Rose Valland doing things at the Jeu de Paume. And the thing was put 15, 20 years ago. So come to the 60s, 70s, the whole thing gets brushed on the carpet. A lot of traces who needed to be kept were just whatever, we have bigger things to do.
Mm. Yeah.
Thank you.
And at Drancy, there is a memorial, isn't there, to the camp there, and the buildings, which were kind of a U-shaped, are still there.
Yes, a regular looking building that became a camp. It's outside Paris. This is a memorial. There's another thing you know about is in French, the Veldiv, which is a stadium for cycling races. The Veldiv doesn't exist anymore, but it's a big anniversary because it is the center point where the French people, they're not Jews, they're French people who were taken by the French police to be handled to the Germans, were kept. The place doesn't exist anymore. And today you say to a lot of young French people, Veldiv, they look at you, what are you talking about? They don't even know. And that's why all of these stories, that includes school. We still have the same old. Each time you put a History Channel on TV or this type of things, it still look like the same old cartoonish Nazis doing the same cartoonish things. But these things, maybe we should put the color images that do exist of Hitler and the Nazis to show them they don't look like caricatures, they look like real people. But the thing is, even the witnesses themselves, the people who survived the war, nobody could understand what they were saying. They themselves wanted to live. And it's only when they arrived to be in their 70s and thinking, hang on a minute, maybe I should share the things I have to say. It's why it's in the 80s that people start to talk about that.
Yeah, it's very common. I mean, it's partly due to trauma, isn't it, Guillaume, that sometimes as well, that you only start to kind of lose your grip on repressing that trauma as you get older and possibly you're starting to become more frail, etc.
And probably when people return, everybody around them wanted to move on.
Yeah.
They wanted to move on.
Absolutely.
And their stories wasn't recovering a Rembrandt, something you can get track of, painting so-and-so, etc. But what do you do when you say, how can I recover the sofa of my grandparents? They say, what does this sofa looks like? Looks like just like any other sofa.
Yeah.
That's what that pile of stolen things on the way to Germany means. Memory is gone.
And of course, from Rose Valland's point of view, she didn't have any offspring who would carry her story forward. So in some ways, she doesn't have anybody to fight for her memory.
Yeah. She died in 1980. And at the cemetery, there were 6 people.
Where is she buried, Guillaume?
In the southeast region of France, by the mountains, in a village. I have never been there myself, but there were 6 people there when she was put in the ground.
Yeah, and it reminds me as well of, you know, the SOE. You know, so many of them took their secrets with them to the grave. Their stories aren't fully told. They will never be fully told because not much evidence remains to tell us their stories. It's very similar.
And the stories are hard to believe.
Yeah.
It is hard to comprehend these things.
Yeah.
And this is why the few photos that are hard to come by, the few documents, and in the case of artworks, someone who recorded things, these documents are so important to explain these things are true. They happened.
Yeah.
And they go beyond your imagination.
But like with everything, Guillaume, just because something's hard to comprehend doesn't mean to say we shouldn't try. And I think that's what you're doing today, which is marvelous. And I think you should keep doing it and tell, as I say, even today, we haven't had the time to tell her story in full. There are so many questions. She's completely underestimated by the Germans. We could probably talk about that. She was the classic grey man, if you like, you know, because she wasn't this kind of young, attractive woman. She was quiet, etc. So she was very grey and she flew under the radar. And, you know, we should speak about her in a more kind of colourful way, you know, and explain exactly who she was, what sort of person she was, and trying to understand that.
There are 2 heroes, Rose Valland and Jacques Jaujard, the Louvre director. Both of them were immense heroes. Both of them undervalued and not as well known as they should. And their stories are totally related because it's Jacques Jojard who asked Rose Valland to stay. Rose Valland goes to meet Jojard once a week at least.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the files I read of her, when she talks about danger, it's not danger for her, it's danger for Jojard and the other people of the Louvre she was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these people need to be known.
Yeah.
And this is why in the movie, based onto a very good book, Monument Men, when you see Rose Valland relegated to a caricature of the ungrateful French in the background, who's not appreciative of the nice American who comes to save her, we need to say to tell the story the proper way.
We do. And I think we'll probably end it there, Guillaume, and hope that you will tell that story. And perhaps when you have told that, we can have you back on and actually talk about your book, specifically on her.
With pleasure.
That would be great.
For having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Anything else you wanted to say, Paul?
No, thank you, Guillaume. Merci. I mean, it's a fascinating subject, fascinating for me to kind of think of what the fate of my own French ancestors may have been and their possessions. And having travelled around Germany for a big chunk of my life and gone into junk shops and seen things that, you know, I kind of recognised as French at the time, it didn't really connect with where they may have come from. And of course, okay, they may have been bought as a holiday souvenir by a German family, but equally they may well have been shipped out of Paris.
Imagine that's exactly the conversation, that if one of these things labeled €5, pot €5, there was a label with your family's name at the back, at the bottom of it, then suddenly it could become something that physically puts you close to the people that are gone, and that will be something of utmost value to you now.
Yeah,
it still will be worth €5, but it will have a huge value in terms of being in touch with the parents, grandparents that are gone, which is exactly the discussion.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, for those of you, I was just going to say one last thing. If you're interested in Guillaume's written articles with The Collector, haven't you, Guillaume? You can find your articles there, The Collector. We'll try and put a link up, won't we, Paul, to that?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
And some nice comments there from Will. Absolutely outstanding. Thank you.
Thank
I
you
had
very
no
much.
idea that household items were stolen and relocated on such a scale. And James says this was fascinating. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, bon, merci, Guillaume, and
Merci.
thank you, and we'll see you again on Talking History with Humphreys and Reed.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.